When words become weapons. Maya Chen pressed her palm against the cold viewport of transport vessel Meridian, watching the massive structure of orbital station Harmony grow larger against the star-filled backdrop. The station looked like a metallic flower blooming in space, its 6 arms extending outward to accommodate different atmospheric requirements for the various species gathering here today. First time seeing the Harmony station, Doc? Captain Sarah Rodriguez asked from the pilot's seat, her weathered hands steady on the controls. Maya nodded, unable to hide her nervousness. First time being the only human translator for a tri-species peace summit too. She touched the neural translation implant behind her ear, feeling the slight warmth that indicated it was processing the 17 different language databases she'd spent 3 months memorizing. "You'll do fine," Sarah said with a grin. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? You mispronounce something and accidentally insult someone's grandmother." Maya managed a weak smile. If only it were that simple. She'd studied the 3 species for months, learning not just their languages but their cultural nuances, their taboos, their sacred phrases that could either open doors or start wars. The Saurians, with their reptilian features and 6 arms, communicated through a complex system of vocal tones, hand gestures, and the color changes in their crystalline scales that ran along their spines. Their language was ancient, formal, and filled with ritualistic elements that dated back thousands of years. The kittens were insectoid beings, whose mandibles could produce sounds across 17 different frequency ranges. They had 4 compound eyes and communicated as much through pheromone releases as through vocalizations. Their society was highly structured, and their language reflected this with strict hierarchical forms of address. The depth dwellers were aquatic humanoids who lived in pressurized suits when not in water. Their communication involved both sonic pulses and bioluminescent patterns that flickered across their translucent skin. They were the most recent addition to galactic civilization, having only made first contact 50 years ago. All 3 species had been at war for over 2 centuries, ever since a trade dispute escalated into full conflict. No one even remembered what the original disagreement was about, but the hatred had grown with each generation. This peace summit was their last attempt at avoiding mutual extinction. Docking sequence initiated, Sarah announced, "Welcome to the most politically dangerous place in the galaxy." The airlock hissed open, and Maya stepped into Station Harmony for the first time. The main corridor was vast, with different atmospheric zones marked by shimmering force fields. The gravity was set to Earth normal, which was comfortable for humans but required adjustment gear for the other species. Ambassador Zethkar was waiting for her, his 6 arms moving in the traditional Saurian greeting pattern while his crystalline scales shifted from deep blue to welcoming gold. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his reptilian features both majestic and slightly intimidating. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice carrying the melodic quality of his species. "We are grateful for your presence. The Saurian hegemony has great faith in human linguistic abilities." Maya bowed in the appropriate manner, her hands positioned to show respect without indicating Ambassador Zechka, the honor is mine. I hope to serve all parties equally in these negotiations. As they walked through the station, Maya noticed the careful separation of the different delegations. The kittens occupied the eastern wing, their section filled with the soft humming sounds of their conversation and the sweet scent of their calming pheromones. The depth dwellers had taken the western wing, their area kept at higher humidity and filled with the soft blue glow of their bioluminescent communication. The preliminary sessions begin in 1 hour, Zethkar explained. We will start with simple introductions and statements of intent. Nothing complex, but every word must be precise. Maya nodded, checking her translation implant one more time. She'd run thousands of practice sessions, but this was different. One wrong word, one cultural misunderstanding, and 3 species might return to war. The main conference chamber was a marvel of engineering, with different atmospheric zones for each delegation connected by force fields that allowed sound to pass through while maintaining the proper environment for each species. Maya's position was at the center, in a neutral zone with Earth-normal atmosphere. High Arbiter Vextal of the Chitons entered first, her 4 compound eyes scanning the room while her mandibles clicked in what Maya recognized as a neutral greeting pattern. She was smaller than the Saurian ambassador, but no less impressive. Her exoskeleton polished to a mirror shine and decorated with the ceremonial markings of her rank. Commander Torek of the Depth Dwellers arrived last, his pressurized suit humming, softly as it maintained the aquatic environment he needed. Through the transparent aluminum of his helmet, Maya could see his features shifting between different bioluminescent patterns, a sign of careful emotional control. Let us begin, Zethkar announced, his scales shifting to formal silver. The Saurian hegemony comes to these talks with open hearts and hopes for lasting peace. Maya translated his words into chitin clicking patterns and Depth Dweller sonic pulses, careful to maintain the formal tone while adapting for cultural context. Both delegations responded positively, their body language indicating acceptance of the greeting. High Arbiter Vextel spoke next, her mandibles producing a complex series of sounds that Maya's implant passed into meaning. The Chitin Collective acknowledges the courage required for these talks. We seek understanding where there has been only conflict. Again, Maya translated, noting the subtle differences in how each species processed the concepts of courage and understanding. The Saurians associated courage with honor and heritage, while the Depth Dwellers linked it to survival and adaptation. Commander Torek's response came as a series of sonic pulses, accompanied by shifting light patterns. The Depth Dweller Alliance hopes to find common waters where our peoples can swim together in peace. The metaphor was beautiful in the original language, but Maya had to be careful in translation. Water metaphors meant different things to land-dwelling species, and she adjusted the phrasing to convey the intended meaning of shared purpose and mutual support. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Each delegation presented their preliminary positions, and Maya translated with growing confidence. The 3 species seemed genuinely committed to finding peace, and their leaders were skilled diplomats who chose their words carefully. Then Zethkar began presenting the Saurian proposal for territorial boundaries. The hegemony proposes a return to the ancient borders established by the first Concordat, he said, his scales shifting to deep purple, indicating the solemnity of the proposal. These boundaries were blessed by the ancestors and marked with sacred stones that have stood for 10,000 years. Maya began the translation, but as she processed the concept of sacred stones into chitin terminology, something went wrong. The neural implant flickered, and for a moment, she accessed a deeper layer of the chitin language database than she'd intended. Instead of using the modern chitin phrase for sacred markers, her implant pulled from an ancient dialect, and she found herself speaking words that meant bone markers of the conquered dead. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. High Arbiter Vextal S mandibles spread wide, revealing the inner mouth parts that chitons only showed in combat situations. Her 4 eyes turned solid black, and a sharp, acrid scent filled the air. As her system released combat pheromones, the other Khitan delegates began the rhythmic leg stamping that preceded their species. Battle rage. Commander Toric's bioluminescent patterns flashed bright red. The depth weller warning signal and his suit's emergency protocols activated, flooding it with additional water pressure in preparation for combat depth. "What did you say?" Sethkar demanded, his own scales now flashing between silver and red. In alarm, Maya's heart pounded as she realized her mistake. The ancient Khitan phrase she'd accidentally used wasn't just insulting, it was a declaration of war, a reference to the old practice of marking conquered territory with the bones of the defeated. 2 chitin ears, she'd just announced that the Saurians intended to slaughter them and use their remains as border markers. There was an error in translation," Maya said quickly. But the damage was done. High Arbiter Vextel rose to her full height, her mandibles producing a sound like grinding metal. Through her combat pheromones, she spoke in a voice Maya had never heard before, the ancient war voice of the Khitan battle queens. Maya's implant translated the words, and she felt her blood turn cold. The translator weapon speaks the old death words. The humans have brought war speech to poison our peace. By the laws of the collective, this is mimetic warfare. Security alarms began blaring throughout the station as all 3 delegations prepared for combat. Maya stood frozen in the center of the chaos she'd accidentally created, watching 2 centuries of peace negotiations crumble because of a single mistranslated phrase. Station security forces surrounded the conference chamber within minutes, but the diplomatic damage was already done. The Khitan delegation was demanding Maya's immediate arrest for war crimes, specifically the use of forbidden mimetic warfare, the weaponization of language itself, as the security officers approached her with neural dampening restraints. Maya finally understood the true weight of her mistake. In galactic law, certain phrases and linguistic constructions were classified as weapons, banned under the mimetic warfare conventions. After several species had been driven to extinction by carefully crafted linguistic viruses, she'd accidentally committed one of the most serious crimes in galactic civilization, using language as a weapon of war. Dr. Maya Chen, the security chief, announced, "You are under arrest for violation of the Galactic Mimetic Warfare Treaty, specifically the deployment of Category 7 psychological warfare constructs against a protected sentient species." As they led her away in restraints, Maya caught sight of the 3 delegations. The chitons were still in full combat mode, their delegates requiring sedation to calm their biochemical responses. The depth dwellers had sealed their environmental suits and were preparing to leave the station immediately. The Saurians stood in stunned silence, their scales shifting through confused patterns of color. 2 centuries of war might continue, because of 17 syllables spoken in the wrong dialect. Maya's career as a translator was over. Her new role as an accused war criminal was just beginning. The human factor, the detention cell on station. Harmony was designed for multiple species with adjustable gravity, atmosphere, and lighting to accommodate various alien physiologies. For Maya, it felt like a sterile medical facility crossed with a maximum security prison. She sat on the bench that had molded itself to human proportions, staring at the force field that separated her from freedom. 3 days had passed since her arrest, and she still couldn't quite believe the situation. She was Dr. Maya Chen, a linguistics professor from Berkeley who specialized in xenolanguage acquisition. She gave lectures on semantic drift and wrote papers on comparative grammar structures. She wasn't a war criminal. The cell door chimed, and the force field flickered off. A tall, angular being entered, one Maya didn't recognize from her species databases. The creature had pale blue skin stretched over a skeletal frame with large black eyes and no visible mouth. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from speakers built into the walls. Dr. Chen, I am Investigator Kalanath of the Galactic Tribunal's Memetic Crimes Division. I am here to conduct your preliminary interrogation. Maya stood, trying to maintain some dignity despite her situation. Investigator, I want to make it clear that what happened was an accident. I'm not trained in memetic warfare. I didn't even know such a thing existed until 3 days ago. The investigator's large eyes blinked slowly. That is precisely why you are so dangerous, Dr. Chen. You are untrained, uncontrolled, and apparently capable of accessing restricted linguistic databases without conscious intent. A holographic display materialized between them, showing brain scan patterns that Maya recognized as neural activity maps. Your translation implant recorded everything that occurred during the incident. We have analyzed the data extensively. The display shifted to show the moment of Maya's translation error, her neural patterns spiking in ways that looked almost violent on the readout. Notice how your brain accessed not just the modern Khitan language database, but 7 layers of historical linguistic data, including warspeak, that has been classified as a cognitive hazard for over 3 centuries. Maya stared at the patterns. I don't understand. The implant was supposed to prevent access to dangerous linguistic constructs. Yes, but you are human, Kalanath said, and something in the way the words echoed from the speakers suggested this was significant. Tell me, Dr. Chen, how many languages did you speak before receiving your translation implant? 12 fluently. With conversational ability in 6 others, Maya replied, not sure why this mattered. The investigator's eyes seemed to grow even larger. And how long did it take you to learn each new language? It varied. Spanish took me 2 years as a child, but Mandarin only took 6 months when I was in graduate school. The more languages I learned, the faster I seemed to pick up new ones. Kalanath manipulated the holographic display, bringing up comparative data from other species. The average Saurian requires 15 years to achieve fluency in a second language. Khitans typically need 8 years, and even then, they can only learn languages with similar grammatical structures to their own. Depth dwellers are capable of learning perhaps 3 additional languages in their entire lifespan. Maya frowned. I don't see what this has to do with. Humans are the only known species capable of unlimited language acquisition. Kalanath interrupted. Your brains don't just learn languages, they adapt to them, reshape themselves to accommodate new ways of thinking. This neural plasticity is what allowed you to access restricted Khitan warspeak. The holographic display now showed a comparison between Maya's brain scan and those of the alien delegates during the translation incident. While the aliens showed predictable patterns of linguistic processing, Maya's neural activity looked chaotic, almost organic in its complexity. But that's just how human brains work. Maya protested veriadaptablen. It's how we survived as a species. Exactly, Kalanath said, and the word carried an ominous weight. From a galactic perspective, every human is a potential memetic weapon. Your species doesn't just learn languages, you unconsciously modify them, create hybrid constructs, develop new grammatical structures on the fly. What you call adaptation, we call uncontrolled linguistic warfare, Maya felt a chill run down her spine. You're saying that humans are naturally ... dangerous? The investigator began, pacing, its movements eerily smooth. 3 days ago, we thought mimetic warfare required specialized training, expensive neural modifications, and years of study in forbidden linguistic arts. Then you walked into a peace conference and accidentally deployed a Category 7 psychological warfare construct using nothing but natural human language processing. The implications were staggering. Maya slumped back onto the bench, her mind reeling. So, what happens now? Are you going to ban humans from the galaxy? That decision is above my authority level, Kalanath replied. But I can tell you that there are already calls for exactly that. The Kitten Collective is demanding that all humans be classified as inherently dangerous to galactic civilization. Before Maya could respond, the cell door chimed again. A new figure entered. Ambassador Zechka, his crystalline scales, a muted grey that indicated deep concern. Investigator, I request permission to speak with the prisoner. Kalanath's large eyes fixed on the Saurian. This is highly irregular. Ambassador, these are irregular circumstances, Zethkar replied, his 6 arms moving in formal diplomatic gestures. The Saurian hegemony has been analyzing the translation incident as well. We believe there may be more to this situation than initial reports indicated. The investigator hesitated, then nodded. You may have 15 minutes. After Kalanath left, Zethkar turned to Maya. His scales shifted to a warmer blue, sympathy mixed with curiosity. Dr. Chen, I must ask you something that may sound strange. When you made the translation error, what exactly were you thinking? Maya considered the question carefully. I was trying to find the best way to convey the concept of sacred markers to the Kitten delegation. I wanted to make sure they understood the religious significance without losing the cultural context. Zethkar's scales brightened slightly. You were trying to bridge understanding between our species. Of course, that's what translators do. We don't just convert words, we transfer meaning across cultural boundaries. The Saurian ambassador moved closer to the force field. Dr. Chen, what you accomplished in that moment, even though it ended in disaster, was something that should have been impossible. I don't understand. Zethkar's scales shifted through several colors as he chose his words carefully. The ancient Kitten war speak, you accessed it, has been extinct for over 3,000 years. The last speakers died during the Great Hive Wars. Yet somehow, your mind reconstructed not just the vocabulary, but the grammatical structures, the cultural context, even the proper tonal inflections. Maya stared at him. That's impossible. The implant database couldn't have had that information. Precisely, Zethkar said, his scales now glowing with excitement. You didn't access stored data. You created a living reconstruction of a dead language based on fragments and context clues. Your human brain essentially resurrected an extinct dialect in real time. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. You're saying, I didn't just mistranslate. I actually spoke ancient Khitan war language. Perfectly, according to our xenolinguistic experts. So perfectly that the Khitan delegates' nervous systems responded as if they were hearing the authentic voice of their ancient war queens. Maya buried her face in her hands. No wonder they think I'm a weapon. Zethkar's scales shifted to deep purple, the color of profound thought. Dr. Chen, what if I told you that this ability of yours might be the key to ending the 3-way war that has plagued our region for centuries? What do you mean? Think about it, the ambassador said, his excitement growing. If human minds can reconstruct dead languages and create perfect cultural bridges between species. Perhaps you could develop a form of communication that all three species could understand intuitively. Maya looked up, hope flickering in her chest. A universal translator language. More than that, Zethkar said. A bridge language that bypasses the cultural barriers that have kept our species at war. Something that speaks to the common elements of consciousness that all intelligent life shares. The cell door chimed, and Investigator Kalaneth returned. Time is up, Ambassador. But Zethkar wasn't finished. Investigator, the Saurian hegemony wishes to make a formal proposal to the tribunal, Kalanath. Large eyes blinked slowly. What kind of proposal? Instead of punishing Dr. Chen for uncontrolled mimetic warfare, we propose that she be assigned to develop controlled mimetic peacekeeping techniques. Let her human linguistic abilities be used to build bridges instead of accidentally burning them. Maya felt her heart skip. You mean work on creating better translation methods? I mean, Zethkar said, his scales now bright gold with hope, become the galaxy's first human linguistic peacekeeper. Over the following week, as Maya's case moved through the galactic tribunal system, something unprecedented happened. Instead of simply prosecuting her for war crimes, the galactic community began to recognize the potential in human linguistic abilities. The trial itself was unlike anything in galactic legal history. Maya stood before a panel of judges representing 17 different species, each one trying to understand how a single human had accidentally accomplished something that should have required teams of specialists and years of preparation. High Arbiter Vexthal of the Chiton, still showing the stress patterns from her exposure to the ancient warspeak, testified about the biological effects of Maya's translation. The defendant's words triggered neurochemical responses that our species has not experienced in millennia. It was as if she reached directly into our genetic memory. Commander Torek of the Depth Dwellers described his own reaction. The sonic patterns the human created bypassed our conscious minds and spoke directly to our survival instincts. In our history, only the great war singers could produce such effects, but the most compelling testimony came from Dr. Zenthara, the galaxy's leading expert on mimetic warfare. What Dr. Chen accomplished was theoretically impossible. The crystalline being testified, her form shimmering with each word. She created a perfect linguistic bridge between species that have been unable to truly communicate for centuries. The tragedy is that she used a warfare construct to do it. When Maya finally had the chance to speak in her own defense, she stood before the tribunal with a proposal that would change galactic civilization forever. Honored judges, she began, I am guilty of uncontrolled mimetic warfare. I accept that. But I believe the solution isn't to punish human linguistic abilities, it's to train them. She gestured to a holographic display showing her proposed research program. Give me a team of xenolinguists from every major species. Let me work with them to develop translation protocols that use human neural plasticity constructively. We can create bridge languages that promote understanding instead of triggering ancient conflicts. The head judge, an ancient being whose species Maya didn't recognize, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. You propose to turn yourself into a controlled weapon? No, Maya said firmly. I propose to turn human linguistic abilities into tools for peace. Every human translator could become a living bridge between species, preventing the kind of misunderstandings that start wars. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some species argued that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to continue their linguistic work. Others, led by the Saurians, argued that human abilities were too valuable to waste. In the end, the verdict was unprecedented. Maya was found guilty of uncontrolled mimetic warfare, but sentenced to rehabilitative service rather than imprisonment. She would become the head of the newly created Human-Alien Linguistic Safety Council, tasked with developing protocols for safe cross-species communication. As Maya left the courthouse, her status forever changed from translator to something entirely new. She realized that her mistake had accidentally solved a problem the galaxy didn't even know it had. Humans weren't just another species trying to find their place among the stars. They were natural bridge builders, capable of connecting minds across the vast gulfs between different forms of consciousness. The war between the three species ended 6 months later, not through military victory or political compromise, but through the development of new communication protocols that allowed them to truly understand each other for the first time in centuries. Maya Chen had indeed committed a war crime by alien standards, but in doing so, she had also discovered humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy: the ability to make strangers understand each other as friends.